Greetings, everyone. Although I did not plan to come on video this evening, I was watching a lecture that I wanted to share with you by John Henrik Clarke, an elder who I've been listening to since I was a little girl. Thank you, Mommy. So looking at him and listening to him just brings warm memories of my childhood. And I just wanted to share some of this lecture with you. I want you to think about some of these things that I want to highlight and show to you.
And truly, one's system of belief or their spiritual identification directly impacts on how they relate to others.
Yes.
So,
yes.
what were the elements of African culture that demonstrated our belief in democracy and true justice in our society?
The respect for the family, and the assumption that elders had lived longer than others, therefore they were wiser in choices, and you created an atmosphere in which the elder automatically became wiser in making choices, because you created an atmosphere where he couldn't be corrupted. By virtue of being an elder, he got his sandals, and he got his clothing, and he got his food, and he was a professional thinker.
Mm-hmm.
And when you had a difficulty, you went to him to think it out and to resolve it. He had lived through youth and middle age, and now he's eldership, so he had learned a lot of things. And yet he never charged you for advice, but you never charged him for the sandals and the food and the clothing either. So it was an exchange that brought about stability. You always had someone to turn to. The uncle plays a major role in African family structures. So that family structure, based on these values, there was no word for prostitution because no one had ever been one. And the idea was unthinkable. When you look at the structure of the society, if a lady is not married at a certain age, two families got together to see what could be done about it until they found a suitable man for her. Whether she found one for herself, they found one for her. See, this was a period before the invention, I'm using the word advisor when I say invention, of the romantic I love you marriage. So that's where we went wrong. That's where we began to have trouble, because the Africans' marriage was based on respect and bringing families together, and sometimes bringing villages together. So when two people married, you had a whole lot of cows and goats, and men came, because each side of the family put together enough means so that they could sustain themselves and make sure they had land. And they didn't have to petition. They didn't have to go into debt. They didn't have to take out any notes. But you belonged to that particular group, and you expected, by virtue of bringing children into being, and by virtue of your behavior, to enhance that group. And that group, by virtue of you belonging to it, protects you by making sure that you had the means of sustaining your family. If you didn't have enough goats, they would go to one family, you give them one goat, you give them until you got 10 goats, you know.
So what I love about this elder is that he reminds us, and it's all about memory, right? The things that we did in Africa, those things that we have strayed away from. The reason why I think it's so important that we look at these things, we go back in the spirit of Sankofa, and we remember those things that we did before, is so we could understand when we do certain things, we understand that this is not our nature. You start questioning some of the things you do and stop looking. When it starts to look like another people, opposed to the ways that you were raised by your elders, especially those who have true elders in their midst, right? People that have not strayed away from our ways, our way of being, our culture. We look to our elders. Our elders had the wisdom because they had lived through being younger, then middle age, and then they became older. And so, yeah, of course, they have gone through certain experiences, that they could give you advice. You may not take the advice. And he said another thing is that with religion became monetization, why we came together spiritually, all of that was lost. Where with the elder, you just went to them and they didn't charge you. Years ago, where I found that people kept coming to me. Got to a point where I just decided to print up my business cards that said spiritual counselor, because it was always these spiritual encounters that kept happening over and over. So I said, maybe next time I meet someone, I'll give them my business card and then eventually charge them a little something. Well, you know what happened? I stopped meeting people for a second until I realized, no, the spirit is trying to tell me you don't charge for spiritual advice. But anyway, back to the elder. I want you to hear some more. I'm going to share some more with you because he's amazing how he taps into our African essence. He even talks about in nature, how he even talks about, let me let you hear this part.
But the spiritual concept was always there, recognized by the African, who thought that the spiritual force that ruled the universe was in everything that lives. Therefore, the African would meditate sometime before cutting down a tree, because a tree was a part of life. He'd only cut down what he needed. And he thought that the spiritual force of the universe was in the water, so he could stand by the water and meditate or pray, or in a tree, and he could stand by the tree, or in himself, so he could meditate within himself. And so he did not need a church as such, and he did not need someone to intervene between himself and the spiritual force of the universe, because he thought that he was a part of that totality and he could communicate directly.
So the African didn't feel the need to have a mediator like a church or a pastor to connect him with God. He didn't need that. And even tree stumps, even leaves, even squirrels, even twigs, even all kind of plants and rocks, everything in nature is speaking. So I love the way the elder described that the African would only cut down a tree as needed because he was.
Dr. Clarke, we certainly thank you for this opportunity. This has been a wonderful and enlightening session. Mm-hmm. And in closing out here, I'd like for you to just sum up in your own thoughts, feelings, and words the subject matter we have been discussing here, and share with us that which you think would help it to take us to the next stage of understanding in this.
See, a discussion of religions in general and Christianity in particular gets us into the question is, what can we use for our own liberation and the maintenance of liberation once we achieve it? And what is good for us is what brings us to that point of liberation, independence, and maintenance. When I say independence, I don't mean independence to commit crime, independence to violate morality. I mean to be free of exploitation, to be free of being demeaned, and to have the right to project yourself as a part of the totality of history. We have to restore the humane apparatus to religions that has been extracted by exploiters who have used religion the wrong way. I think we must use religion to give the world a new humanity. But we have lost the meaning unless we understand that we must first give it to ourselves, because you cannot change the world until first you change yourself. I think all religion is good depending on its application, and all have the potential of being bad depending on its poor application. I think all of us should have the integrity to make that distinction and apply it for the good of ourselves and for all humankind, while giving each one the right to choose the interpretation that suits that particular case without demeaning the interpretations that suit other cases for other people. I have long ago left the adherence to any form of organized religion, and I belong to an African belief system, and I am comfortable spiritually with that belief system that furnishes me the integrity and the spirituality and the support that I think I need in my life. And because this is a humane belief system, I'm not ready to deprive others of having an opinion different from me, but I'm also have the nerve to let others know that when any belief system that fails to serve the basic human needs of people and the basic protection of people is open to question, and I'm not above asking that kind of question.
In other words, you see that bringing spirituality back to religion.
Yeah, bringing spirituality back to religion, and religion will become non-partisan and not clannish and selfish.
So I'll just leave it at that. But it's all about, the bottom line is, we are a spiritual people, and we have to continue to tap into the spiritual essence of who we are every day of our lives, every second of the day. There is nothing that we do during the day that spirituality does not play a part in. You should wake up in the morning, or sometime, like not even sometime, before you even rise, you can feel spirit pulling you out of the bed. Even the times that you don't even want to get out of the bed because you want to snooze, spirit is still doing its job and trying to get you to rise and answer to the call of spirit. So that's all I'll say right now, because I'm feeling a little tired. So I'm going to be honest. I'm going to go take a shower and I'm going to retire for the day. So I hope you've got some meat out of that. And I thank you so much for listening. Peace and love. Blessings.